The crystal chamber of the Galactic Council Station gleamed under the artificial lights. The massive room could hold thousands of beings, and today it was packed. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in their assigned sections, their voices creating a low hum of conversation that echoed off the walls. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood alone at the center of the chamber. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. She had been Earth's voice in the galaxy for 12 years. She had helped humanity join this council. She had believed in what it represented. Now she watched as everything fell apart. The Zephyrian Chancellor rose from his seat high above the chamber floor. His blue skin seemed to glow in the light, and his forearms moved gracefully as he spoke. His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that every being wore. "We are here today to address serious crimes," the Chancellor said. "Crimes that threaten the peace we have worked so hard to build. Crimes committed by the species known as humanity." Lisa felt the weight of thousands of eyes on her. Some beings looked angry, others seemed sad. A few appeared to be enjoying the spectacle. She forced herself to stand straight and look directly at the Chancellor. "The charges are severe," the Chancellor continued. "First, humanity has violated the sacred accords of non-interference. They have developed weapons of mass destruction in secret. Second, they have established colonies in sectors that are forbidden to all species. Third, and most disturbing, they have conducted illegal experiments on sentient beings." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several alien representatives stood and pointed at Lisa. She could hear words like barbarians and dangerous being translated into her earpiece. The Chancellor raised one of his 4 hands, and the room fell silent. "We have evidence," he said. "Communications intercepted from human military vessels, video recordings of unauthorized colonies, testimony from multiple species who have witnessed these crimes." Large screens descended from the ceiling. The evidence played for all to see. Lisa watched in horror as images flashed before her. Human ships in forbidden space, scientists in white coats working over alien subjects, military leaders discussing weapons that could destroy entire planets. Back on Earth, President Jack Morrison sat in the Oval Office. The walls around him displayed the same images that were being shown to the Galactic Council. His jaw was tight, and his hands gripped the arms of his chair until his knuckles turned white. "Sir, we need to respond," said Helen Baker, his chief of staff. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her voice was strong. "The public is already starting to panic." Secretary of Defense Paul Rogers paced behind the president's desk. He was a tall man who had served in the military for 30 years before taking this job. "This is all lies," he said. "Every single piece of evidence they're showing. We never authorized any of this." President Morrison watched as the screens showed more damning footage. Human soldiers in armor he had never seen before. Scientists conducting experiments he had never approved. Colonies on worlds he had never heard of. "How is this possible?" he asked quietly. "Someone made this?" Rogers replied. "The technology exists to create false footage this realistic, but it would take enormous resources and months of work." On the council station, the Chancellor was reaching the end of his presentation. "The evidence is clear," he said. "Humanity has shown that they cannot be trusted. They have violated every principle that holds our alliance together. They have proven that they are too dangerous to remain part of civilized galactic society." Lisa finally found her voice. "I request permission to address the council," she said. Her words echoed through the chamber. The Chancellor looked down at her with what might have been pity. "You may speak, Ambassador Grant, but know that the decision has already been made." Lisa walked to the speaking platform at the center of the chamber. She looked up at the thousands of beings around her. Many had been her friends. She had shared meals with some of them. She had worked late into the night with others to solve galactic problems. Now they all stared at her like she was a criminal. "Honored representatives," she began, "I have served on this council for 12 years. In that time, I have seen humanity grow from a young species eager to learn to a valued member of this alliance. We have shared our art, our science, our hopes and dreams with all of you." She paused and looked around the chamber. A few beings nodded slightly, but most remained stone-faced. "I do not know where this evidence came from," she continued. "But I know my people. We are not perfect. We have made mistakes. But we are not the monsters you see in these recordings. We came to the stars seeking friendship and knowledge. We found both here, in this council." The Chancellor's voice cut through the chamber. "The evidence speaks for itself, Ambassador. The council has voted. The punishment is as follows." Lisa felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming, but hearing it would make it real. Humanity is stripped of all trading rights with Council. "Species," the Chancellor announced. "All human colonies in Council space must be abandoned within 60 days. All humans currently living on non-human worlds must return to Earth within the same period." The chamber erupted again, but this time the voices sounded pleased. Lisa heard words like justice and finally coming through her translator. "Furthermore," the Chancellor continued, raising his voice above the noise, "Earth itself is to be quarantined from galactic society. No ships may leave your system. No ships may enter it. This quarantine will last for a minimum of 500 years. 500 years. Lisa felt the words hit her like a physical blow. It was a death sentence for humanity's presence in the galaxy. By the time the quarantine ended, everyone alive today would be long dead. Their children and their children's children would grow up knowing only Earth. The Chancellor looked directly at her. "Do you have any final words, Ambassador Grant?" Lisa stood straighter. She thought about her daughter back on Earth who was just starting college. She thought about all the young humans who had dreamed of exploring the stars. She thought about the friends she was losing and the alliance that was being torn apart. "History will remember this day," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "But not for the reasons you think. The truth has a way of surfacing, and when it does, you'll understand what you've really done here." She turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, the council representatives were already discussing the details of enforcement. No one tried to stop her. No one said goodbye. On Earth, President Morrison rose from his desk as the live feed ended. The screens around the Oval Office showed riots breaking out in major cities. In New York, crowds were throwing rocks at the United Nations building. In London, protesters were burning alien flags. In Tokyo, people were crying in the streets. His fist came down hard on the wooden desk, the sound echoing through the room. The same desk where presidents had signed peace treaties and declarations of war, where they had made decisions that changed the course of human history. "Get me the Joint Chiefs," he said quietly. "Get me the head of NASA. Get me everyone who has anything to do with our space program." Helen Baker was already reaching for her phone. "Sir, what are you thinking?" The president looked out the window at the crowds gathering on the White House lawn. Some were angry, some were scared. All of them were looking to him for answers he didn't have. "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that we've just been sentenced to death. And I'm not going to let that happen without a fight." 3 months had passed since the quarantine began. Earth felt like a prison. The blue sky that had once seemed endless now felt like a cage. Ships that had once carried goods from distant worlds sat empty in orbital stations. Factories that made parts for alien technology had shut down. People were losing their jobs every day. Dr. Amy Collins wiped the red dust from her helmet visor as she stood outside the ancient Martian ruins. She had been working on Mars for 2 years before the quarantine started. Now she was stuck here with her team, unable to return to Earth because of the travel restrictions between human worlds. The ruins were old, older than anything humans had built. The Martians had died out thousands of years ago, leaving behind only empty cities and broken machines. Amy had spent months trying to understand what had happened to them. Today, she hoped to find some answers. "Dr. Collins, you need to see this," called Marcus Webb, her assistant. He was standing next to a metal door they had uncovered the day before. The door was covered in symbols that looked nothing like any human writing. Amy walked over to where Marcus stood. The door was different from anything they had found before. It was made of a metal that did not rust or fade. The symbols seemed to glow slightly in the dim Martian sunlight. "I think it's some kind of entrance," Marcus said. "The scanner shows a large space behind it. Much larger than anything we've found so far." Amy ran her gloved hand over the symbols. They felt warm, even through her thick gloves. "Have you tried the sonic probe?" "Yes, but the metal is too thick. Whatever is behind this door, the Martians really wanted to keep it safe." Amy studied the symbols more closely. Some of them looked familiar. She had seen similar markings in other ruins, but never so many in one place. She pulled out her tablet and compared the symbols to her database. "Wait," she said softly. "These aren't random. They're coordinates, star positions, and this symbol here." She pointed to a complex design near the center of the door. "This means memory or record in the ancient Martian language." Marcus looked excited. "You think it's some kind of archive?" "Only one way to find out." It took them 6 hours to figure out how to open the door. The key was pressing the symbols in a specific order that matched the positions of stars in the Martian sky when the door was built. When Amy pressed the final symbol, the door made a soft humming sound and slid open. The space beyond was enormous. The walls were covered with machines that glowed with soft blue light. In the center of the room stood a tall cylinder that reached from floor to ceiling. Strange symbols moved across its surface like flowing water. "My God," whispered Marcus. "It's still working. After all these thousands of years, it's still working." Amy approached the cylinder carefully. As she got closer, the symbols began to move faster. Suddenly, a voice filled the room. It spoke in the ancient Martian language, but her translator device picked up most of the words. "Welcome, visitors from the stars," the voice said. "If you have found this archive, then our fears have come true. Our people are gone, but our warning remains." Amy and Marcus looked at each other. A warning? About what? The cylinder began to project images into the air around them. They saw Mars as it had been thousands of years ago. Green plants covered the surface, blue oceans filled the valleys. Cities full of tall, graceful beings stretched across the continents. "Our world was beautiful," the voice continued. "We lived in peace for many generations. We built cities that touched the sky. We explored the depths of our oceans. We reached for the stars and found others who had done the same." The images changed to show alien ships arriving at Mars. The ships looked familiar. Amy had seen similar designs in Galactic Council databases. "They came to us with promises of friendship," the voice said. "They told us about a great alliance of worlds. They said we could join them and share in the knowledge of 1,000 species." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. This sounded exactly like how the Galactic Council had approached Earth 50 years ago. The images showed Martians and aliens working together, building things, sharing technology. Everything looked peaceful and happy. "For many years it was good," the voice continued. "We learned much from our new friends. We shared our discoveries with them. Our world became more prosperous than ever before. But then the images changed. The aliens began to demand more. They wanted Mars to mine certain metals from deep underground. Metals that were rare in the galaxy but common on Mars. The Martians were hesitant. The mining would damage their world. They assured us the mining would be small," the voice said. "Just enough to help the Alliance. But the small mines became large ones. The large ones became massive operations that scarred our world." Amy watched in horror as the images showed beautiful Martian landscapes being torn apart by enormous mining. Machines, mountains disappeared. Oceans were drained to reach mineral deposits beneath them. "When we protested, they said it was for the greater good," the voice continued. "When we refused to expand the mining operations, they said we were being selfish. When we demanded they stop, they said we had violated our agreements." The images showed Martian leaders meeting with alien representatives. The conversations grew heated. The aliens made threats. The Martians stood firm. Then came the accusations, the voice said sadly. "They said we were developing weapons. They said we were planning to attack other worlds. They said we had become dangerous and could not be trusted. Amy's blood ran cold. It was exactly what had happened to Earth. The final images were the worst. Alien ships surrounded Mars. The planet's defenses were overwhelmed. Cities burned. The beautiful world that had existed for thousands of years was destroyed in a matter of days. "We were not the first," the voice said as the images faded. "Our records show this pattern repeated on many worlds. Species that possessed valuable resources were either absorbed completely or eliminated when they resisted. The alliance you may know today was built on the bones of civilizations like ours." The cylinder went dark for a moment, then began to glow again. "If you are receiving this message, then you may be facing the same choice we faced. We have left you more than just our warning. In the archives below, you will find our most advanced technology. Weapons and defenses we developed too late to save ourselves. Use them wisely. Do not let our fate become your fate." Amy stood in stunned silence. Marcus was staring at the cylinder with his mouth open. "Dr. Collins," he whispered, "we need to contact Earth immediately." Amy nodded slowly. She was thinking about President Morrison and all the people back home who were struggling under the quarantine. She was thinking about the evidence that had been presented to the Galactic Council. Evidence that now seemed clearly false. "Get Commander Walker on the communication array," she said. "Priority 1 and Marcus?" "Yes, Dr. Collins." "Start downloading everything from this archive. All of it. If what this voice is telling us is true, then Earth is going to need every piece of technology we can find." As her team began their work, Amy stared at the ancient Martian symbols flowing across the cylinder's surface. The Martians had been betrayed by the same aliens who now controlled the Galactic Council. They had been destroyed for the same reasons Earth was now being isolated, but unlike the Martians, Earth had been warned. Unlike the Martians, Earth still had time to prepare. The question was whether they would have enough time to learn how to fight back. Outside the archive, the red Martian sky stretched endlessly above them, but Amy no longer saw it as empty and dead. She saw it as proof of what could happen to worlds that trusted the wrong people. And she was determined that Earth would not share the same fate. Captain Linda Hayes gripped the controls of her ship as it drifted silently through the asteroid belt. The New Horizon had been exploring the outer rim when the quarantine was announced 6 months ago. Instead of returning to Earth like she was ordered, Linda had made a different choice. She had gone dark. Her crew of 38 people had voted unanimously to stay. They had supplies for 2 years and mining equipment that could extend that indefinitely. More importantly, they had something the people back on Earth did not have. They had freedom. "Captain, we're getting another signal," said her communications officer, Tony Martinez. He was a young man who had joined the space service right out of college. "It's using the old freight channel codes," Linda smiled. The freight channels were how merchant ships had communicated before the quarantine. The Galactic Council probably thought humans had stopped using them. They were wrong. "Put it through," she said. The voice that came through the speakers was tired but determined. "This is Captain Robert Chen of the cargo vessel Distant Star. We're carrying 200 refugees from the Kepler colony. They refused to abandon their homes. We need a safe place to dock." Linda looked at her navigation officer, Maria Santos. Maria had been working in space for 15 years and knew every hiding spot in this part of the galaxy. "There's an old mining station about 6 hours from here," Maria said quietly. "It was abandoned years ago, but the life support systems still work." Linda keyed her microphone. "Captain Chun, this is Captain Hayes. We can guide you to shelter. Switch to navigation. Frequency 7 and follow our beacon." Over the next few days, more ships arrived. The merchant vessel Golden Eagle brought families from 3 different colonies. The research ship Deep Thought carried scientists who had refused to give up their work. Each ship brought people who had made the same choice Linda had made. They would not surrender. The abandoned mining station became their base. It was built into a large asteroid that provided natural protection from sensors. The station had been designed to house 500 people, so there was room for everyone who arrived. Ryan Clark was the first person to suggest they were building something bigger than just a hiding place. Ryan was a technology specialist who had worked on alien computer systems for 10 years. He was small and quiet, but he understood machines better than anyone Linda had ever met. "Captain, I've been studying the data from Mars," he said, as they sat in the station's main meeting room. "Dr. Collins sent us everything they found in that Martian archive. The technology is incredible, but more than that, it's designed to fight. The exact kind of ships the Council uses." Linda leaned forward. She had read the reports from Mars, but Ryan understood the technical details better than she did. "What are you saying, Ryan?" "I'm saying the Martians knew this day would come," he replied. "They built weapons and defenses specifically to fight Council technology, and they left us the blueprints." Around the table, the other ship captains looked interested. Captain Chain stroked his beard thoughtfully. "How long would it take to build?" "These weapons?" "That's the beautiful part," Ryan said with excitement. "We don't have to build them from scratch. The Martians used modular designs. We can adapt existing human technology. Our ships, our mining equipment, even our life support systems, everything can be modified." Over the following weeks, the hidden base transformed into something none of them had expected. Engineers worked around the clock to install Martian weapon systems into human ships. Miners adapted their equipment to gather the specific materials needed for the new technology. Even the cooks and medical staff found ways to help. Meanwhile, back on Earth, something else was happening. Karen West had been a news reporter for 20 years. She had covered wars and disasters across human space, but she had never covered a story like this one. The evidence from Mars had reached Earth through secret channels. Karen had contacts in the military and the government who trusted her. When they showed her the Martian records, she knew she had to tell the world. The problem was that all official news channels were being watched by Council monitors. Any story that criticized the Council would be blocked immediately. But Karen had spent years building a network of independent broadcasters and pirate radio stations, people who operated outside the official channels. "This is the truth they don't want you to hear," Karen said into her hidden microphone. Her broadcast was being transmitted from a basement in Chicago to relay stations across Earth. "The Galactic Council has lied to us. The evidence against humanity was fake. We are not the first species they have destroyed." Her words reached millions of people. Factory workers listened on illegal radios. Students passed recordings between their tablets. Even some government officials quietly shared the broadcasts with their colleagues, but the most important people who heard Karen's words were not human at all. The first alien contact came through an old trade frequency that most people had forgotten about. The message was simple: "We have been waiting for someone to speak the truth." The sender identified himself as Keth, a member of the Vorthan species. His people had been integrated into the Council 50 years ago. What that really meant, Keth explained, was that the Vorthan homeworld had been stripped of its valuable minerals and his people forced to work as laborers for Council industries. "Your broadcasts are reaching our people," Keth told Karen during a secret communication session. "Many of us have suspected the truth for years, but we were afraid to speak. You have given us courage." Soon, other alien voices joined the hidden network. The Kalani had lost their merchant fleet to voluntary nationalization by the Council. The Zindari had seen their scientific discoveries claimed as joint Council research. Species after species told the same story of exploitation and control. President Morrison sat in a secure bunker beneath the White House as reports flooded in from around the world. The quarantine had been intended to isolate humanity, but instead, it had created something the Council had not expected. It had created unity. "Sir, we're getting reports from our deep space monitoring stations," said General Peter Hayes, the new head of military operations. He was not related to Captain Linda Hayes, but he shared her determination. "Council ships are massing near the edge of our solar system. It looks like they're preparing for something big." The president looked at the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. They had been working frantically for months to implement the Martian technology, but there was still so much work to do. How long do we have? He asked. Maybe 2 weeks, sir. Maybe less. Morrison nodded slowly. He thought about the hidden base in the asteroid belt where Captain Hayes was building her fleet. He thought about the scientists on Mars who were still uncovering Martian secrets. He thought about the alien allies who were ready to fight alongside humanity. General, send a message to all our people. Everyone in the outer colonies, everyone in the resistance network, everyone who can hear us. Tell them it's time. Time for what, sir? The president stood and walked to the window that looked out over Washington. Even through the thick protective glass, he could see crowds of people in the streets. They were not rioting anymore. They were organizing. They were preparing. Time to stop hiding, he said. Time to show the galaxy that humanity will not go quietly into the dark. Time to prove that when you betray someone, you better make sure you finish the job. Because if you don't, they might just come back stronger than before. Above them, in the cold space between worlds, Council ships continued to gather. Their commanders were confident that humanity would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. They had used this strategy many times before against many different species, but they had never faced a species that had been warned by the ghosts of their previous victims. They had never fought an enemy that knew their methods and had prepared accordingly. And they had never encountered a resistance that included not just the target species, but also the survivors of all their previous conquests. The trap they thought they were setting was about to become a trap of their own making, and humanity was ready to spring it. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the Sol system through the viewing screen. His reptilian features showed no emotion, but inside he felt satisfied. 200 Council ships surrounded Earth. Like a closing fist, the humans would have no choice but to surrender. Admiral, we are detecting unusual energy readings from the human system, reported his sensor officer, a thin Alteran with pale blue skin. Zektar's yellow eyes narrowed. What kind of energy readings? Unknown, sir. The patterns do not match anything in our databases. They appear to be coming from multiple sources throughout the system. The Admiral studied the tactical display. Earth's orbital defenses had been rebuilt since the quarantine began, but they should still be no match for Council technology. The humans were clever, but they were young and inexperienced in galactic warfare. Open a channel to Earth, he ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the interior of what humans called the United Nations building. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the assembly hall. At the podium stood President Morrison, looking directly at the camera. I am Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Council Fleet, the Admiral announced. You are in violation of quarantine terms. We have detected weapons development and illegal communications with hostile alien groups. You will surrender immediately and submit to inspection. President Morrison did not flinch. Admiral, we have evidence to present to the galaxy before any inspections begin. Evidence that will change everything. Zektar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. You are hardly in a position to make demands, human. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender now, and your people may be allowed to live? The president looked around the assembly hall. Every seat was filled. Cameras recorded everything for broadcast across the entire galaxy through hidden transmitters. This moment would be seen by billions of beings on thousands of worlds. You accuse us of betrayal, Morrison said, his voice calm but strong. You accuse us of violating sacred trusts? You claim we have become dangerous and cannot be trusted. He paused and looked directly into the camera. His next words would be remembered throughout galactic history. But we have evidence, irrefutable proof, that humanity was betrayed first. As he spoke the word first, President Morrison slammed his fist down hard on the podium. The sound echoed through the assembly hall and across space to every ship. In the Council fleet, massive screens descended throughout the chamber. The Martian archives began to play for all to see. Ancient records showed world after world being consumed by the Council's expansion. Species after species being eliminated when they refused to comply. The pattern was clear and undeniable. On The Council flagship, Admiral Zektar, watched in growing anger as the evidence played across his screens. "Where did they get this?" he hissed. "Sir, the broadcasts are reaching every corner of the galaxy," his communications officer reported. "We cannot block them all. The transmission sources are too scattered," the evidence continued to flow. The real history of the Martian extinction. Records of dozens of other civilizations that had been destroyed. Communication logs between current Council members discussing how to eliminate humanity. The proof was overwhelming. "Admiral, we are receiving priority communications from the Council leadership," his aide announced nervously. Zektar read the message that appeared on his personal screen. It was brief and direct. "Silence the humans. Use any force necessary. This transmission must not continue." The Admiral straightened his shoulders. He had carried out orders like this many times before. The galaxy was better off without troublesome species that could not see the wisdom of Council rule. "All ships prepare for attack," he ordered. "Target their transmission facilities first, then their orbital defenses. Show no mercy." But as the Council fleet moved toward Earth, something unexpected happened. Ships began emerging from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of species. Vorthan fighters appeared near Jupiter. Kelani cruisers decloaked near Mars. Zendari science ships revealed weapons that should not have existed. "Admiral," his tactical officer shouted, "we are detecting massive energy buildups from the human defenses. The readings are off our scales. The moon had been transformed into a fortress. Weapons that used Martian technology charged with power. That made the Council ship sensors scream warnings." The asteroid belt revealed itself to be a network of hidden military bases, each one bristling with weapons the Council had never seen before. Captain Linda Hayes stood on the bridge of her flagship, the New Horizon, now equipped with the most advanced Martian weapons they had been able to build. Her voice carried across the resistance network to every ship in the combined fleet. "This is for every species the Council has destroyed," she announced. "This is for every world they have stripped bare. This is for every civilization they erased. From history, today we fight back." The battle erupted across the entire solar system. Council ships that had expected easy victory found themselves facing technology that was centuries ahead of their own. Martian weapons tore through Council shields like they were made of paper. Human ingenuity combined with alien determination created a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Near Jupiter, Captain Robert Chun's modified cargo ships used their mining equipment to disable Council cruisers. The tools that had been designed to crack asteroids proved equally effective against enemy armor on Mars. Dr. Amy Collins watched from her research station as Martian defense systems that had been dormant for thousands of years came online. The planet that had once been helpless against Council attack now struck back with the fury of the dead. The Council fleet found itself surrounded and outgunned. Admiral Zektar watched in disbelief as his ships were systematically destroyed or disabled. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this. No single species had ever successfully resisted the Council before. "Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from 17 of our ships," his communications officer reported with shock. "The Vorthan and Kalani forces are offering to accept prisoners." Zektar stared at the tactical display. More than half his fleet was gone. The remaining ships were scattered and demoralized. The quarantine that was supposed to weaken humanity had instead given them time to prepare and gather allies. On Earth, President Morrison watched the battle unfold on screens. Throughout the United Nations building, the transmission was still broadcasting across the galaxy. Every species that had ever suffered under Council rule was seeing that resistance was possible. "Mr. President," said General Hayes, "we are receiving communications from neutral worlds. They are demanding an immediate ceasefire and the formation of a new galactic government." Morrison nodded. The battle in space was important, but the real victory was happening in the hearts and minds of beings across the galaxy. The Council's authority was crumbling as the truth spread from world to world. "Admiral Zektar," Morrison said into the Open communication channel. I offer you one chance to surrender. Your fleet is defeated. Your lies have been exposed. The galaxy now knows what you really are. The admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at him with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. Many of them had never questioned the Council's methods before. Now they were seeing the consequences of those methods. "This is not over," Zektar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're right," Morrison said calmly. "Is not over. It's just beginning. The old council is finished. What comes next will be built on truth instead of lies, on cooperation instead of domination, on justice instead of oppression." Across the galaxy, on worlds that had suffered under council rule for generations, people were rising up. The broadcasts from Earth had given them hope and shown them that their oppressors could be defeated. The galactic order that had existed for centuries was collapsing in a matter of hours. Admiral Zektar looked at the tactical display one last time. His once mighty fleet was broken. The humans he had come to destroy were broadcasting their victory across the galaxy. The council that had seemed eternal was falling apart. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zektar gave an order he had never expected to give. "All remaining ships," he said quietly, "stand down and prepare for surrender." The war that followed changed everything. It was not just humans fighting the council anymore. It was every species that had ever been crushed under council rule rising up together. The galaxy burned for 3 years, but when the fires finally died down, a new order had emerged from the ashes. General Peter Hayes stood on the bridge of the battleship Freedom as it approached Kepler 442b. The same world where humanity had been condemned now hosted peace talks between the resistance and what remained of the council. The irony was not lost on anyone. "General, we are receiving docking clearance from the neutral zone," reported his navigation officer. Around them, ships from 50 different species formed a protective formation. Vorthan fighters flew alongside. Human destroyers. Kilani merchants carried supplies next to Zindari science vessels. The war had been brutal. Entire star systems had been devastated in the fighting. The Council had fought desperately to maintain control, using weapons that destroyed planets when they could not hold them. But for every world they burned, 10 more species joined the resistance. Dr. Amy Collins had become more than just an archaeologist. During the war, she was now humanity's chief liaison with the growing alliance of free species. Her discovery on Mars had started everything, and she felt the weight of that responsibility every day. "Dr. Collins, we have another site to investigate," said her assistant Marcus Webb. They were standing in the ruins of Altair Prime, the former capital of the Council. The blue-skinned Alterans had been among the Council's founding members, but even they had eventually turned against their former allies when the truth became undeniable. "What did you find?" Amy asked. Marcus led her to a building that had once housed the Council's historical archives. Most of it had been destroyed in the fighting, but some records had survived in deep storage. "It's a list," Marcus said excitedly. "A complete record of every species the Council eliminated or absorbed over the past 1,000 years. There are hundreds of them, Amy, hundreds of civilizations that were wiped out just like the Martians." Amy studied the data on Marcus's tablet. Each entry showed the same pattern. First contact trade agreements, growing dependence on Council, technology, demands for resources, resistance, false accusations, destruction. "Send this to the peace talks immediately," she said. "The delegates need to see this. Every species in the galaxy needs to know how many civilizations were lost." On Kepler 442b, the peace talks were not going well. The remaining Council species sat on one side of the massive conference room. The Resistance Alliance sat on the other. Between them, neutral species tried to find a way forward that would not lead to more war. Former Admiral Zektar was among the Council representatives. He had been stripped of his rank and position, but his people had chosen him to speak for them. He looked older now, his yellow eyes tired and defeated. "You want us to admit to crimes committed by leaders who are long dead," he said to the assembled delegates. "You want us to pay for decisions we did not make. President Morrison stood to respond. The past 3 years had aged him greatly, but his voice was still strong. Admiral, those leaders may be dead, but their victims deserve justice. The species you destroyed deserve to be remembered. And what of our people? Asked the Zephyrian representative, her blue skin pale with exhaustion. We were born into this system. We believed we were bringing order to the galaxy. Should we be punished for the lies our ancestors told us? Ambassador Lisa Grant, who had returned to diplomatic service after the war, spoke carefully. No one is asking for revenge. We are asking for acknowledgement. We are asking for a promise that this will never happen again. The debate continued for days. Some resistance members wanted the former council species to be stripped of their technology and confined to their home systems. Others argued for forgiveness and integration into a new galactic government. The breakthrough came when Dr. Collins arrived with the data from Altair Prime. When the full list of destroyed civilizations was read aloud, the room fell silent. Even the former council representatives seemed shocked by the scope of what their government had done. 732 species, Collins announced. Gone forever. Their art, their science, their dreams, all erased because they would not submit to council authority. The Zephyrian representative began to cry. Zektar stared at his hands. Even the neutral delegates seemed overwhelmed by the scale of the loss. But we can still save the ones who remain, Morrison said into the silence. We can build something better. Not a council that rules through fear, but a federation that governs through consent. The negotiations took another month, but eventually an agreement was reached. The old Galactic Council was formally dissolved. In its place, a new federation was established based on principles of equality and mutual respect, the former council. Species were not punished, but they were required to make amends. Their advanced technology would be shared freely with all species. Their resources would be used to help rebuild the worlds damaged in the war. Most importantly, their historical records would be open to ensure that the truth about the past was never hidden again. The signing ceremony took place in the same crystal chamber where humanity had been condemned 4 years earlier. President Morrison stood at the podium where Ambassador Grant had once made her final plea for justice. Today we do not sign a peace treaty, he announced to the assembled delegates. We sign a promise that no species will ever again face the choice between submission and extinction. A promise that diversity will be celebrated, not crushed. A promise that truth will never again be sacrificed for the convenience of the powerful. As the delegates signed their names to the founding charter of the new federation, children from dozens of species played together in the viewing galleries above. Human children laughed with young Vorthans. Kilani youngsters shared toys with Zindari hatchlings. Even young Alterans and Zephyrians played alongside the children of species their governments had once oppressed. Captain Linda Hayes watched the ceremony from her ship in orbit. The New Horizon had been converted back to an exploration vessel, and she was preparing for humanity's first joint expedition with their new allies. They would visit the dead worlds documented in their council archives and build monuments to the civilizations that had been lost. Captain, we are receiving our departure clearance, reported Tony Martinez. Our first stop is the old Martian research station, Linda smiled. Set course for Mars, Tony. It's time to go home. On Mars, the ancient research station had been converted into a memorial and museum. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the archives that had exposed the Council's crimes and learn about the civilization that had tried to warn the galaxy about what was coming. Dr. Collins stood in the main chamber where she had first heard the Martian voice 4 years ago. The cylinder still glowed with soft blue light, but now its message was broadcast continuously to anyone who wanted to hear it. We were not the first, the ancient voice said, just as it had that first day. Our records show this pattern repeated on many worlds. But now there was a new message added to the archive, a message from humanity and their allies. You were not forgotten, the new recording said. Your warning was heard. Your sacrifice was not in vain. The galaxy has learned from your example, and we promise that what happened to you will never happen again. President Morrison visited the memorial on the 5th anniversary of the Federation's founding. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but he still felt the weight of responsibility for what humanity had helped create. Ambassador. Grant found him standing before the wall of names, every species that had been destroyed by the old council. There were so many names that the wall stretched for hundreds of meters through the memorial complex. Do you think we did the right thing? Grant asked quietly. Morrison considered the question carefully. I think we did the only thing we could do. When someone betrays you, you have two choices. You can let it destroy you, or you can use it to become stronger. And if we become too strong, if we become what they were? Morrison pointed to the children playing in the memorial gardens. Human children and alien children learning together, growing up in a galaxy where cooperation was valued over domination. Then, those children will stop us, he said with confidence. That's what the next generation is for, to be better than we were. As the sun set over the Martian memorial, its light reflected off the crystal spires that had been built to honor the lost civilizations. Each spire represented a different species, and each one contained samples of their art, their music, their literature. Whatever fragments had survived the Council's purges, the galaxy would never forget what had been lost. But more importantly, it would never stop working to ensure that such losses never happened again. Humanity had been betrayed first, but they had used that betrayal to forge something stronger than what had come before. In the end, that was perhaps the greatest victory of all. Not just survival, but the creation of something worth surviving. HFY. A galaxy where truth mattered more than power, where diversity was strength rather than weakness, and where the mistakes of the past served as guideposts for a better future. The war was over. The real work of building peace had just begun.